Hello, I'm Stephen Fagan, curator of the Sixth Floor Museum at Dealey Plaza. Our institution's ongoing oral history project explores the history and culture of the 1960s, as well as the life, death, and legacy of President John F. Kennedy. This year, to celebrate Martin Luther King Day and Black History Month, we are pleased to present Voices from the Civil Rights Movement, a special series of recent oral history interviews with 1960s activists. In these intimate, detailed, one-on-one conversations, an outstanding group of storytellers share powerful memories from several key moments of the movement, including the Montgomery bus boycott, Freedom Rides, the March on Washington, Mississippi Freedom Summer, the Selma to Montgomery March, and the SCOPE project of the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. We hope that these remarkable, relevant stories will spark conversation and build bridges of understanding and communication between generations. Please keep in mind that these are full, free-flowing oral history interviews. In addition to moments of technical difficulties, there may be harsh language and graphic descriptions of violence. Viewer discretion is advised. If you or someone you know would like to share memories of the 1960s or articulate how President Kennedy has impacted your life, please contact us at oralhistory@jfk.org. We continue to record conversations year-round as part of this ongoing archival initiative, and we believe that everyone has a story. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you enjoy these voices from the civil rights movement. And ma'am, at the start of these, we always ask our guests to introduce themselves, if they would, with their full name, date and place of birth, and just a little background about your early life.
Okay, my name is Betty Daniels Rosemond. I grew up in the French quarters of New Orleans. I still have family there, and I'm very happy to have grown up there. My date of birth, May 14th, 1939, and I just had a birthday 2 weeks ago. I am now 82 years old, and I'm very, very happy and very proud that God granted me that length of time.
Oh, well, congratulations on your birthday. And again, thank you very much for being with us today. Let's go way back, if we could, to your early childhood. I'm hoping, because these interviews are primarily for younger people born long after the 1960s, if you could kind of set the scene as a young person, what it was like to first encounter racism and segregation, maybe how that culture was explained to you as a kid.
Well, the culture was self-explanatory. If we looked around, everything that I can remember, everything that I look back on was separate, but supposed to be separate but equal. I can assure you it was separate, but I can also tell you that a lot of it was not equal. Everything in New Orleans as a little child that I remember was segregated. The buses, the metro buses, transportation, the restaurants, they were white and colored. Everything was segregated. I remember as a child getting on a city bus and being asked to get up and give my seat to a white person and move to the back of the bus. We were required to do that, because everywhere you turn, you could not go in white-only restaurants. You could not drink from the white-only fountain. Everything that I can look back and remember was separate, but certainly not equal.
You weren't much older than Emmett Till, a teenager, of course, when he was brutally murdered. How did that impact you as a young person?
Well, as a young person, it was something awful to even think about. Right now, I can tell you the memory of Emmett Till is still in my home. It's in my heart, and I still think about the things that were going on then and what happened to Emmett. In fact, as a matter of fact, his mother came to New Orleans to speak at the rally after that happened. And even though I was in school, I was a teenager, I want to tell you this. I went to the rally. I wanted to hear Mrs. Steele and what she had to say. And I'll never forget her. But what she had to say had us all in tears. And I remember she said that her son, Emmett, was a good brick. She used the example as a good brick. And she said God was building mansions in heaven. And he took Emmett, he took the good bricks. And I remember that as a girl. And I was in tears, but I will never forget her speech. And it had everybody in tears, and it was very sad. Today, I still keep a picture of Mrs. Steele in my home because these are things that will be with you forever. They're in your memory.
That rally, was that the same occasion that you got to meet Dr. King?
No, she came, it was at the same place. Dr. King, when he came to New Orleans, he was not allowed to speak at the municipal auditorium. And they would not rent it to him in the Union Hall, the labor union, the Longshoreman Union Hall, rented him the hall. And I went to the hall to see Dr. King. I'll tell you that story in a minute. But Mrs. Steele, they also had her at the Union Hall at a different date. And I went to the Union Hall. I paid quite a few visits to the Union Hall because that's what they were renting that to them. Now, when Dr. King came, we were in school. I was in high school. And when I found out they were not going to let him speak at the municipal auditorium, they were going to have booked him for the Union Hall. My sister and I decided we would leave school that day. We had to find a way to leave school to get to see Dr. King. So whatever it took, we had to see Dr. King. He was at the Union Hall. It was in the same located area as our high school. So when we knew it was time for him to be on program, my sister and I sneaked out the back door down through the basement of the school. We sneaked out the back door, not through the basement. We didn't have basements in New Orleans, but we had the lower floor. We went out through the back door. We sneaked over to the Union Hall. We were not missed. They didn't know we had left the school. And we went to hear Dr. King. We did. They wouldn't let us in the Union Hall when we got there. There were guards at the door, and they were black young men, but they would not let us in. They asked us how come we were not in school. And it was during school hours. And we wanted to see Dr. King. So we waited outside. They would not let us in because of the school hours. And we stood on the side and waited. When it was over, Dr. King came out. And we were yelling so loud for him, my sister and I. He couldn't miss seeing us or hearing us. And he came over to where we were. And he asked us a question. And at first it irritated me a little bit because I was expecting big smiles and maybe a hug or something. But he pointed his finger at us. He shook his finger and he said this, "How come you're not in school?" And I just couldn't believe I was hearing this. But this is what he asked again. And we told him, because we wanted to see you, Dr. King. We wanted to see you. And he said, "That's good, but it is not as important as staying in school." And that was our words with Dr. King. And after that, we said goodbye. I was so glad we got to see him, even though I had got a little irritated with the question. But it was, when you think about it, it was important. It was important both ways that we get to meet Dr. King. And all my life, I will tell it. Yes, we met Dr. King, and he urged us to stay in school.
I understand that while you were going to LSU, you got involved with CORE primarily because of something that happened with your mom. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Well, my mom, she wanted to vote. And living in New Orleans, the Black people could not register to vote unless they owned property. And they were given a test. The test was questions that they could not answer. It was designed for failure. And even as a kid, I knew it was designed for failure because listening to some of the questions. And then I came home from school one day and my mother was in tears. I was in high school, but she was in tears. And I wanted to know, Mom, why are you crying? What's going on? She had been up to register. And she said they would not let them vote because, number one, they were Black. Number two, they had to pass tests. Now the test, I said, well, Mom, what kind of questions? What was the test like? And she said we were asked questions like, how Black is midnight? How many stars are in the sky? How much candy is in this jar that I'm gonna sit here? They couldn't answer that. My mom was in tears and some of the other adults were in tears. And that brought me to tears because nobody wants to see their parents in tears. So I said, well, maybe tomorrow or the next day. My mom went back several times to try to register and she could not register. And she was not the only one. It affected all the Black people, mostly the people in New Orleans, and they had to own property and they couldn't vote. So that broke my heart because I know that my mother had a right to vote. I wanted to see her vote. And I just couldn't hardly take that. And even as a teenager, I knew that something had to be done to guarantee them a right to vote. Legislation was already passed. It was being considered, and their right to have been, they had a right to vote, but they weren't letting them vote. So I knew I had to do something. Even as a teen, we were members. I was a member of the Civil Rights Organization, one of them, the NAACP. We had a teen chapter. We had other organizations that was willing to step up and help to make the wrong right. And I had to do something. So I later found out that an organization called CORE, and that's Congress of Racial Equality. Their headquarters was in New York, and they were coming down south. The whole deep South was segregated. Everything was really bad in the deep South. And they were going to come down to try to organize down south to help put an end to some of the problems of segregation. And we were very happy when we heard that help was coming. In order to be a part of this group, you had to become nonviolent. A lot of people didn't know what nonviolent was, but you had to be trained to be nonviolent. You couldn't just make a promise that, oh, I won't hit back, or I won't talk back, or I won't do this or that. But I will go through the training, and whatever it takes, I would want to become a member of CORE. Did you have any questions so far?
Oh, I have so many questions, but you're doing such a great job of telling the story. Of course, in addition to CORE, there was King's organization, the SCLC, and then there was the little bit more radical SNCC. I'm just curious, did you consider all of these organizations and go with CORE? What was your thinking behind that?
My thinking was strictly focused on God, because CORE was a nonviolent organization. With every move, every bus ride, with every demonstration, God was in the picture, because the organization put God in everything. And this is why we were able to be trained to be nonviolent. For example, if someone called you names, you could not retaliate. And I'm going to tell you something that happened to me on the picket line. We would go after school every day once we went through our training with CORE. Once we became a member of CORE, and we would go down to Canal Street and picket F.W. Woolworth, because they had separate lunch counters. Black people had to go all the way to the back of the store to the lunch counter. CORE and some of the student members of school started picketing after school on Canal Street. And we were picketing F.W. Woolworth daily. Now, one day I was on the picket line, and me and another young lady, we were picketing, and two boys walked up to us. They were two white kids, maybe 14 years old, and they were harassing us. They called us names. They were really, really harassing us. And we could not answer. We could not do anything. The two boys walked up to me, and they called me names, and both of them spit in my face. And all I could do was stand there and look at them and let the tears fall. I began to cry, but I couldn't answer. I couldn't retaliate. Now, there was a minister sitting on the side. He came over and he whispered to me, "Continue what you're doing. You're doing a good work, and it has to be done. Keep up the good work." And then a voice, the Lord. I'm a Christian, so I'm glad I'm a Christian. I'm glad I was a Christian then. A voice said, "Forgive them, for they know not what they're doing." And I knew that it was the Holy Spirit. Forgive them. And I was able to do that. I looked at them, I forgave them, because I know they did not realize what they had just done. But God knew. The movement was strictly nonviolent. No matter what happened to you, you had to be nonviolent. When I was taking my training during that time, one of the trainers that came down to train us, she slapped me, and she slapped me so hard it almost knocked me to the floor. And I wanted to be angry. I wanted to get up and grab her. I wanted to fight back, but I couldn't. It was a choice. You're either gonna be nonviolent, you're gonna do what the training requires, or you cannot be a part of it. So I was able to survive that, and I was able to be nonviolent. And I thank God for that. Every time we went on a trip, on a freedom ride, on the bus, we would sing songs of praise. We would sing civil rights songs. We would sing gospel songs. We would have prayer, but we put God in it all the way, and we were able to survive it. And this is why I'm so thankful that that I took part in it. You have anything, cut me off at any time.
I would never cut you off. You were fantastic, and bless you for your patience having to, as a young person, especially a young person full of energy and probably full of resentment at the way you're being treated, to approach a situation like that with total nonviolence is absolutely commendable. I understand that your sister had a little bit of trouble embracing that sort of nonviolent doctrine.
Yes, my elder sister, and we could not let her become a part of CORE because she could not embrace that, especially the day after she found out that the boys had spit in my face. She found out how hurtful that was, because it really did hurt. I don't know if anybody can ever say that they've gone through that, but to have someone look at you and spit on you, and that was very hurtful. But my sister, she was not going to buy it. She was not going to take part in it, because she would not agree to us that she would become nonviolent. So when she heard about that, the next day she told us, when we were going down to the picket line at Woolworth, my sister said, "Sis, you let somebody spit on any one of y'all today, and Canal Street is going to be in trouble." She said, "It's going to be a problem." So I asked her, "Please don't do anything or say anything, because we are working very hard to keep peace here." We looked up during the time we were picketing, and about a half a block away, we saw my sister coming on her way. I'm sorry. She was walking up the street. She was about a half a block from us. And someone said, "Here comes your sister. Uh-oh, here comes your sister." But she'd already told us that it would be trouble if she came up there. So we had to stop for a minute, and we went halfway down the block to meet her. And we had to really talk her down. We had to turn her around. We could not let her take part in what we were doing. And we did not. And I want to say my sister, she was my elder sister, and I lost her at least about a month ago. She had moved to California, but I was very proud of my sister, even though she didn't take the path that we took, but she was willing to do what she had to do.
As an older sibling myself, I can totally understand her desire to want to protect and defend her little sister. Absolutely.
Oh, she was ready, believe me. And I thank God we were able to meet her in time and convince her that she had to turn around.
In 1960, John F. Kennedy is running for president against Richard Nixon. Do you recall how you felt about this senator from Massachusetts when he was running for president? How you thought he was going to embrace the movement or reject it?
Well, I want to tell you this. This is the main reason. This is one of the reasons my mom, she had to vote, because she was President Kennedy all the way. And we had to make sure that her rights were not violated, because she most certainly wanted to vote.
When the freedom rides got underway, of course, Kennedy was critical. I remember at one point he even said that the freedom riders were being unpatriotic because he feared that they were going to cause other countries to look down on the United States. Were comments like that coming from this president that you had such hope for? Was that hurtful or disappointing?
No, well, I was still a teenager at the age, but I was concerned about my mother. I never wanted to see my mother hurt. And if my mother said this was okay, If my mother said this is the person that she would want to vote for, if my mother knew that she had a right to do things, some things, that her rights were being violated, whatever it took to make my mother feel good, to make my mother feel right, I wanted to do all I could, and I would do everything I could for my mother.
One of the Freedom Ride buses got bombed on your birthday, right?
Yes. I was May 14th, and it was my birthday, and the bus was coming to Anniston, Alabama. They were coming down to New Orleans, to be honest with you, but they made a stop in Anniston, Alabama. Now, the Freedom Riders were on that bus, but when they pulled into Anniston, it was a Greyhound bus. There were two buses. The bus got firebombed, and there were riders on that bus that we knew, because Freedom Riders came from all across different cities, and they came south. They went to different cities to help work out the problems. So they were on the bus. There were a couple of people I met as Freedom Riders that were on the bus. One young man, his name is Hank Thomas Jr., and he was the one that managed to get that bomb off that bus after it was tossed in. And personally, yes, I know Hank. Hank, he did a lot for the civil rights movement. And there were many more people who laid their lives on the line for equal rights. I always felt like this. And people would ask you, how can you do it? And we knew when we would leave home to go on a freedom ride that you may not be going back home. And the feeling was, if I died, I died. But any cause worth living for is a cause worth dying for. And that was my belief.
How did your mom feel, though? I mean, you putting yourself in danger is one thing, but how did your mom feel about her daughter doing that?
Well, my mom, she knew me pretty well. And she always said I was feisty. She always said I had to get my way. I wanted my way on different things. And I think my mom knew that I needed to do what I was gonna do. Let me tell you, my grandson, pretty soon there'll be a play out in the city, and I hope you get to see it. But it pertains to the civil rights. My mom is they did a reading and they showed it for 2 weeks where people could see what it's gonna be like. Now I'm trying to forget what I wanna say.
About the scene with your mother.
Oh, my mother, on the video that the theater made, and you will see it if you see the video. And I do hope you get to see it. But what my mother said in the video, and I said, oh my goodness, she let everybody know how I was because she told in the video, she was talking to me and I was a school kid. And she was saying, you know, you're always stubborn and you're feisty. She said, if I tell you not to cross that street, I turn my back for a minute, you're gonna cross that street. And then she said, and if I look over there at that tree, you'll see this in the video. She said, I will tell you, do not climb that tree. And I turned my back for a minute and you're up the tree. So I think I was kind of stubborn. I cried a lot, and that was okay because I got my way with that. The milkman would bring the milk and I would want to run and be the one to carry it in. And if one of them beat me to the truck, I would start crying. and the milkman would make them give it to me. So I had some maize, and it was all right. It worked. But I feel in my heart, when you feel you have to do what you have to do, when you know within your heart that all lives matter, that Black lives matter, and people need to know that. But they, things are just, there's a lot of problems.
For some of the younger viewers who may not be familiar with the Freedom Rides and what their purpose was, maybe you could talk a little bit about how you were testing the public transportation system.
Yes. When we growing up in New Orleans, as I told you, everything was segregated. And you had to get up and give your seat to a white person if they needed, whatever they needed, they got it. We had to do that. Now, it was not easy. It was hard. It was hurtful. And even like in school, when I graduated and I went to LSU because New Orleans had built an LSU campus. I graduated and it was my time to either go to college or do something more. Now, I don't know. I wanted to go to LSU and I wanted to go that year I graduated in 59. But we couldn't afford it. My mother couldn't afford to send me to LSU. I worked for a family in New Orleans and my family worked for them and they were very good people and they were wealthy people. Now, he wanted me to work an extra year when I graduated. But I didn't want to do that because my friends were going to college, the ones who could afford it. And they were going in September. So I wanted to go too. And they offered me, if I work an extra year, they would help me go to college. But I didn't want that. I wanted to go in September. Mm-hmm. So the family decided that since I was so stubborn and not changing my mind, they would pay tuition for me to start at LSU. And they did. So I was very blessed with that. But I want to tell you, when we got to LSU, which had just desegregated, they were not really recognizing Black people in the sense that it was supposed to be. There were about 10 or 12 of us there. But in the classroom, they would not recognize us when there were questions asked. They would not recognize our hand if we would put it up to answer a question. So we got together and we decided an answer to the problem. If they won't see us, then they will hear us. So we would shout the answer out. So we started answering out loud when the questions were asked, and that did work. So I did get to go to LSU for 2 years, and I'm so thankful. I was so blessed because the family that provided me to go there. And then I was really blessed because when I got out of LSU, it was when the time for the civil rights movement had started and things were going on. And the priority at that time for me was civil rights movement.
Would you tell me about that harrowing experience you had in Poplarville?
Yes, I can tell you a little bit about that. I try to forget it, but it's something you can't forget. It's something you live. When we go south and we go past the signs for Poplarville, for the exits, I'm asked sometime by my grandson, Nana, can we get off and see what it looks like now? It's got to be different. Can we go through? No, we can't get off and we can't go through. We'll take an exit. We'll go a different way. I don't think I want to go through again. But one night, the Freedom Ride, you know about the Freedom Ride, the bus that got bombed in Anniston, Alabama. Well, the Freedom Riders in New Orleans, they went up to Montgomery, Alabama. They got a bus. And I want to tell you this, we didn't rent buses. You went down to a segregated bus station. You bought tickets. There were other people on the buses. So it wasn't just a Freedom Ride bus. There were passengers on the bus. There were Freedom Riders on the bus. So they went to Montgomery, Alabama on a Freedom Ride. And it was 6 of the members, 6 students, but they were members of the core group in New Orleans. But this group came from Washington. I'm moving ahead, I'm sorry. But nevertheless, the group from New Orleans took a Freedom Ride, and they went up to Montgomery, and they were testing the facilities. Now, the Freedom Riders were testers. The government had passed legislation saying that things must change. Segregation must end. But it wasn't being followed. It was on the books, it was the laws, but they were not being followed. So the Freedom Riders were a group of testers, and they were from all different cities, and they came together and decided to travel throughout the land to see who was obeying these laws, who was obeying these tests. And they were they found out that a lot of it was not being followed. So everything was still segregated in a lot of places, yeah. The group that left New Orleans were testing. They went up to Montgomery, and they went over across the way. There was a little restaurant. And this was Poplarville. Poplarville is Mississippi. Now, let me tell you a little about Poplarville, which you already had heard. We knew about Poplarville by hearing it on the news, but we were teenagers, but I still knew the history. There had been a lynching. It was called the lynching town, Poplarville. There had been a man lynched and brutally murdered in Poplarville about a year before that. His name was Mac Parker Jr. He was a Black guy. He was accused of whistling or looking at a white woman that lived in Poplarville. He was beaten to death, he was lynched, and he was thrown into the Pearl River. And this was all over news, national news, and spread throughout. So Poplarville had received the reputation as being a lynching town. And this is where the kids that were on that Freedom Ride that had gone up to Mobile, they had went over, it was 6 students. And I went on that, they had gone over to across the way to Poplarville. And it said on the post that the news got, the 3 of the girls went in the white only side, and they served them a drink, a pop. And when they came out, they were arrested because they were not supposed to go in the white only side. There was a young man, and I'm sure you have heard his name. And he is Frank Nelson Jr. He was from out of state. He came down to help our group. And he stopped and asked the police why they were arresting the girls that had just come out of the Poplarville side. And they were arrested because they were Black and they had gone in that side. Even though they had served them, they were arrested. Then Frank was arrested for asking why he would get into that and want to know why they were arresting them. So they arrested him too. Now on that ride, on that particular ride, I went on that ride, on that bus. It was Greyhound. We went up. Each one of us was given an assignment on the ride. If something happened along the way, someone had to report it. Someone had to let New Orleans know what was going on because they were going to be in a lynching area. Okay, when the kids went into the station, when the bus got bombed and everything, when they went into the station and when they got arrested, when they came out, I was still sitting on the bus because my assignment was to call New Orleans Corps and let them know if anything happened along the way, they needed to know. So I got off the bus when I saw them arresting the Freedom Riders. I got off. I saw a walk-in phone booth over across the road. And I got off and I went over to the phone booth because back then we didn't have cell phones. I'm talking about 1961. I went over to the phone booth and I made a call to New Orleans, to our Corps headquarters there. And I told the lady what had just happened and about the kids being arrested. And we were in Poplarville, Mississippi. Now I'm in the phone booth, and then there's a mob gathering on the other side of the road. The bus driver looked over there. He knew I got off the bus, and then he pulled off and left me. I'm stranded in Poplarville. It's around 8 o'clock at night. I don't know if you've ever been through Mississippi at night when it's so dark you can't see anything. But I'm in the phone booth. There's a mob gathering on the other side. The bus driver has left me. I was scared. People asked me, were you afraid? Yes, I was afraid. But the walk-in phone booth had a floor like, and I was young. I only weighed 100 pounds. So I stooped down in that area on the floor of the phone booth. I made my call and I stayed down while they're running up and down looking, but they didn't notice the phone booth. So I stayed in there and then the bus pulled off and left me. And then a few minutes later, a Black man, elderly man from a gas station further down behind the phone booth walked past. He walked to the road to see what the commotion was. When he walked past the phone booth, I managed to open the door a little bit and he saw me. And I said, sir, could you please help me? They're looking for me, that mob over there. I said, I'm a freedom rider. Could you please help me? And he says, stay down. I'll see what I can do. I'll be right back. And he walked back to the station. And I heard him talking to the two white guys that was in there. And he said, could you, I've got an emergency at home. He said, I need to use the truck. I'll be back in a few minutes. Could I use the truck? And they let him do that. So he must have been accustomed to using the company truck if he had an emergency. So he pulled back over near the phone booth. He slowly opened the door and he said to get in, but stay on the floor of the truck. Stay on the floor. He said, I'll take you to the interstate. So I told him a little bit about what was going on. I told him the bus had left me and I was from New Orleans. So he said, stay down, I'll see what I can do. And then he came back a little bit, a few minutes later in the truck. He opened the door. He said, I'm going to take you to the interstate and maybe you can get a ride from there. Can you imagine a Black teenager around 8 o'clock at night on a Mississippi interstate trying to thumb a ride? He prayed all the way to the interstate. And I'll never forget that. That was so important to me. And he was praying and he was saying, Jesus, help me. Tell me what to do. Jesus, I got 8 children. I can't put her out on the road. Tell me what to do. and I'm on the floor of the truck. When we got to the interstate, he said, I can't do it. I can't put you out on the road. He said, I'm going to drive you all the way, but you got to stay down on the floor. I stayed down on the floor of the truck. He drove me all the way to New Orleans. New Orleans, the signs today say 75 miles. And he was really hitting it. He was driving it. He drove me all the way to the courthouse. They came out. Some of them, they already had got the phone call. So they came out and they were waiting. And when we got to New Orleans, they talked to the man. And he had to get back. He said, don't release this tomorrow, because if you do, it will get me and my family killed. So he said, I don't want it to go to the papers. So after they talked to him, he left to go back to Poplarville. And that was my experience in Poplarville. The man that saved my life, to this day, I don't know who he was. We tried later on, not right away. We waited a while and tried to find out who this person was. My daughter even made a couple of calls to Poplarville, but wasn't nobody talking, And he, to this day, I don't know who he was, but I know that God sent him. And I know that he was my guardian angel because he got me out of Poplarville. And to this day, I will always remember that. And I will always be grateful to God about sending the man.
And during all of this, you had no idea what had happened to those three girls and Mr. Nelson. As far as you knew, they could have been killed.
Well, what I saw and what the paper had said, what I found out later, it wasn't exactly in the agreement, because I thought they would kill him. That was a lynching town, and with them killing Mac Parker, I just knew they would kill him that night in jail, and that was my fear. But they didn't kill him, but they harassed him that night. They were still, but what I saw, and I said it, and they didn't agree with it. This Poplarville, the police in Poplarville said they arrested them and they put them in the police car. But that ain't what I saw when I was still on the bus. I saw them put them in the back of a pickup truck, and I saw them drive off. And I'm still, hiding out. But I saw what I saw. And even though later they said that they didn't put them in a truck, they put them in a car. So I don't know, but I know what I saw.
It's incredible.
And this is very important. Bobby Kennedy was the Attorney General at this time. Bobby Kennedy was very much a person who tried to help the movement. Our organization had a direct line to Bobby Kennedy that they could call him if they needed to talk to him. And they were very grateful for that. Now, I was told the night when this happened, after I called our headquarters, that our person in charge, I'm not going to call her name, but she's already dead. And she's one of the streets in New Orleans is named after her. She was a very faithful, very dedicated civil rights worker. That they made a call to Bobby Kennedy that night. He was Attorney General, and they told him what had just taken place in Poplarville, Mississippi. And we were told that Bobby Kennedy called Poplarville and that he told them, he knew the whole story because he repeated it. And he told them if anything happened to those young people that were in jail, he would have the troops there in the morning. And that was what we were told. And they didn't harm them. They didn't kill them. And we were so thankful. But they gave an order from Anderson that they were going to try them the next day. In Poplarville. And they were going to try them the next day. And we had to go up there to Poplarville to the trial. So I went. I had some courage. I wanted to know that they were okay. I wanted to ride along. And there were maybe 5 or 6 carloads of people left New Orleans to go up for the trial. And it was in it looked like a big old barn, outdoor barn or something, the courthouse, the room where we went to trial. They tried them, they fined them, they released them, and we were able to take them back to New Orleans. There were people who left New Orleans to go up too, to make sure everything was okay. When we got back to the Louisiana state line, we were being followed by groups of people from Poplarville, carloads of people. When we got to the state line, thank God, there were the highway patrol, Louisiana police had it all lined along the water near the Pontchartrain, and they were waiting for us, and we were very happy. So that's Poplarville. I haven't been back to Poplarville, and I don't plan to go back to Poplarville, but I have pictures, I have memories, and I know, maybe there has been changes, but looking around every day and what we see normally, everywhere you go, there's problems, and there need to be some changes. Michelle, do you have anything?
It took a tremendous amount of courage, I imagine, to get off that bus, because you could have stayed on the bus and been safe and gotten off at the next station to make but I
wouldn't have been safe. There would have been nobody on that bus but me and the bus driver, because the Freedom Riders, they were already taken off. There were very few, 1 or 2 people on the bus that went on to New Orleans. And I'm sure I would have been lynched somewhere along the way. I wouldn't have stayed on that bus. There was no way they would have allowed that.
Because you were by yourself, that somebody would
Right.
have taken you off?
Right. But they, yeah, that's right. I'm sorry. They arrested the 3 of them, and there were the other 2 were on it. But we had assignments, and my assignment was to make a phone call. And then it hit me on the bus. How can you make a phone call? You don't even have a phone. I didn't even own a cell phone, in fact. And I can't remember family members with a cell phone, but I didn't get off the bus. I knew if I got off that bus, that would be it.
What do you remember from the day President Kennedy was assassinated, November 22nd, 1963?
Well, we were talking about that when I was on the way over here, because I couldn't remember if I had got here in Cincinnati already, and I'm sure I was, because I eventually married someone from Cincinnati, and I moved to Cincinnati. And I remember being at work the day he got killed. And I was telling my daughter, and I was a little mixed up because I had jobs. When I came here, I took a job. And one job I took, I've been with them 40-some years. And I'm still with them, but I'm not doing it right now. But it was a sad day. It was a sad day, because it seemed like everybody loved President Kennedy. And if I could have voted for him, I would have done it. He would have got it.
Lyndon Johnson used Kennedy's memory after the assassination to push through that civil rights legislation in '64. How did you feel about that, about Johnson doing that, using Kennedy's memory as a driving force?
Well, you know, a lot, that's why there were a lot of problems, because a lot of things that were supposed to be done were still a problem on the books. It was not being followed. That's why it became necessary for a lot of the demonstrations, a lot of the things that went on had to be done. Like going on a freedom ride. We went through other places, other cities, and everywhere you went, there were problems that shouldn't have been. I was arrested in Alexandria, Virginia. I went to a white-only restaurant, me and another freedom rider, because we found out it was segregated. Black people couldn't go, and it was in downtown Alexandria. And we went one morning to breakfast, she and I. And guess what? Got arrested. Got arrested from the restaurant. Spent the weekend in jail, simply because the laws were on the papers and everything, but that you were still arrested. So there are many things that you still remember.
In that instance, when you would get arrested for something like that, would the charge be like breaching the peace or something like that?
It was breach of peace, yes.
Okay.
And how can you have peace when you got a commotion? You got people out there picketing. You got a lot going on. Let me put it like that.
So after the passage of the Civil Rights Act in July of '64, did you go back to visit your mom in New Orleans? I mean, did you go down south and see any visible changes after the passage of that law?
Oh, yes. Well, my mom died. My mom died before then. Oh, no, she's 81. But forgive me, I'm 82, and I have to put it all back together again. My mom died at an early age, but my mom did get the vote, I can tell you that. There were changes made, but there were a lot of things still going on. When I went back home and I got a job, I was working picket line. When I was working picket line, I was working the elevator downtown, one of the elevators where you had to tell them what floor and everything. I was on the picket line before I went to work that day, and this lady, she saw me. She worked in the building. It was a big office building downtown. But when I got the day before that, the man who was in charge of the building had congratulated me on doing a good job because I hadn't been there that long. And he said I was doing such a good job. Then the next day I go to work and I get fired. He calls me in the office and he fires me. And he told me because one of the ladies in the building had seen me on the picket line and she complained. Because I was Black, I was out there picketing and I was in the heart of downtown. So things are still going on, and I'm sure things are still going on today. There's a lot of things that people, like I've raised my children in such a way to always demand respect. And when people make you invisible, they're violating your right. And let me give you an example of that. We go shopping. My daughter loves to shop. And sometimes we're standing at the counter and we may be standing there ahead of other people. And the clerk may walk up and ignore us and ask, say my daughter example, I use her. but bypass her and there's somebody else. Can I help you, please, ma'am? And we've been standing there a half hour or more. No, it doesn't work like that. We were here. We're not invisible. We were next. And this is, sometimes you have to demand the respect that you deserve. And this is what, there are plenty of things still going on that people overlook or ignore, but they're still happening. And I want to say, I want to correct something I said, if you don't mind. I said before, and it's my belief in what I meant to just say was Black Lives Matter. And I always try not to say all lives matter, but Black lives do matter. And this is, but people need to learn what love is. They need to learn what respect is. We've got to love one another. We're commanded by God to love. We must love each other. And I don't care what people say or do. You are special and you must love one another. So this is where I'm at now. Even when I look around, I see some things that may be issues, but I've learned that one day those issues, we will have to give an account of that. And that's when we stand before God.
You were recognized by Oprah Winfrey as a freedom rider. What
Yeah.
was it like?
Oh, that was wonderful. I've got a big picture at home with Oprah sitting right there. The National Women's Law Center. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm at two different occasions. But Oprah invited us to her show, The Freedom Riders, and we went, and it was very wonderful. And I've got pictures, and it was very nice. It was a blessing. Not only Oprah, I got to meet President Obama, and I got to meet quite a few, and I never in my lifetime would have dreamed it would go that far, to meet people of that caliber and to do some of the things that we did and the people that we came in contact with. So I thank God because he brought out a lot that I never would have dreamed of.
Such an extraordinary journey from being in that phone booth in Poplarville to getting to meet the first African-American president.
Right.
What an extraordinary thing. Obviously, there are still lessons to be learned from the 1960s. There are still problems that we see evidence of every day. What words of wisdom can you share with young activists who are getting involved even as we speak?
Well, I don't know how I want to put this. And I'm asked that question all the time because the key word and what I will say to anybody and everybody is love. And that people, they think, what is she talking about when she talking? How can you love somebody when they are doing you so bad or when they hate you? You must love. Without love, we're in trouble. And we, Shelley, come on, share it with me. Oh yeah, I always tell everybody this. You must always look up. You know who's up. If you don't know, I'll help you. I'll tell you. I'll help you find up. Look up. I spoke at the Martin Luther King breakfast, and that was my speech there. You must look up. Our help comes from the Lord. All of our help will come from up there. Look up, speak up, pray up. Everything is up. And one day, we're going up. I can't speak for everybody, but I can speak for me. One day I plan. And the reason I say I plan it, because he has promised Jesus made plans for us. He said, I go to prepare a place for you, and I'm coming back and receive you unto myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And that is something one of these days I'm going up. I tell people to look up. One morning I was sitting at home. I'm going to share this. I was sitting at home and I was a little bored. Sometimes you get bored when you're just there. And two words came to me, just out of the clear blue. And I thought, what is that? And I heard it like I'm talking to you. And it said, hit it. And I said, hit it. Now, what is that? I started thinking, what is that? And then I thought, Lord, tell me what's going on. Tell me what is hit it. What are you trying to tell me? And what came to me was give God glory, more glory. Make sure we give God the glory he deserves, the respect he deserves. Make sure we always give him the glory. It's only because of him that I'm alive today. It's because of him that one day I expect to go there. I expect to go up. And we need to honor him more. There are a lot of people that don't respect him, but they need to. They need to know who he is. They need to know when this started up, this pandemic, everybody was going around giving scripture about, help me out, Shelley. Okay. But anyway, you know what? If my people who are called by my name will humble themselves and pray and turn from their wicked ways, then I will hear from heaven and heal the land. That's it. I'm holding it right there.
Well, you are a treasure, and bless you for your willingness to share your story with so many people, talk to school groups, do interviews like this, do programs. I've seen several programs with you online. That is just amazing that you were so open with your experiences from the 1960s, including the painful ones. Is there anything that we haven't covered? Any other thoughts or memories that you want to share with me today?
No, I'm so thankful for the invitation that you would consider inviting me to speak. And the other day, someone gave me a birthday gift, and it really touched me. And it said Zoom Queen. I told my daughter, I said, I'm getting a little bit tired, but it's all right, because as long as I can let someone know what it was like, what we still have to do, we still have work to do. And in the word we must always remember is to love one another.